So yeah, I'm Luke Bonaccorsi. I'm a software engineer at Skybetting and Gaming, which is an online gambling company based in Leeds in the north of England. I'm also the organizer of the local JavaScript meetup in Leeds, Leeds.js. I've been building stuff since I was about 12 for the web, which is like over 15 years. And I just found it so cool that you could put stuff on the internet, because like that was 2001, 2002, when it was kind of, broadband was just starting to become a thing, and yeah, it was super cool. You could put stuff on the internet, and I've been hooked on it ever since. And yeah, I'm here to talk about how I ended up automating my curtains and shouting at my laptop. So I'm lazy. If there's a way I can not do something, I won't do it. And because of that, automation's an amazing thing. I can just automate the boring stuff away. And every day we're surrounded by automation, and we probably don't realize it. So there's stuff like traffic lights, automatic doors, motion sensing lights, automatic hand dryers, cash machines. And that's just stuff I noticed and paid attention to today. And it shows how prevalent it is in our everyday lives. And as consumers, we're embracing it more and more in our homes. There's heating with the Nest thermostat, and lighting, like Charlie mentioned, with the Philips Hue. And even IKEA are getting in the game now with really, really cheap smart light bulbs. And then there's access control with things like smart door locks. And these things usually have APIs, so you can hook them up and interact with them however you want. So you can do like a node script and run it from the command line if you want to do that for some reason. Or you can create a node service and have a dashboard and hook all your different bits of home automation together. So you've got like your lights and your heating and your door, and it's all on one place, and you just know, I go here and this is where it is. And as developers, we use automation to make our lives easier and more efficient. And there's stuff like build tooling, so you can run a single command, and it does a chain of things like linting, running your tests, transpiling, putting it through Webpack. And there's also automated tests, so you've got functional tests where it'll run in a headless browser and check things and see how they behave and how they look and make sure it's right. And then there's your unit tests, so you're checking your input and your output and making sure that it's what you want, and you're not having to go through and check that manually every time you make a change. And even infrastructure configuration, so you can build up a server just with a set of scripts using something like Chef or Ansible. But as interesting as that stuff can be, I'm not here to talk about that. Over the past couple of years, there's been a bot uprising. I'm calling it that anyway. They're quickly becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives and helping us with everyday things. It's stuff like, at my work, we have a release token, and it's a really, really, really simple bot. You send it a message, and then it adds you to a queue. When it's your turn, it sends you a message back saying, hey, Luke, it's your go. You do your release, you test it, you do whatever you need to do, and then drop the token, it messages the next person in the queue. But it makes that stuff more efficient. Someone isn't having to monitor who's doing what. It's dealt with by the bot. And then CNN have a Facebook bot that it can give you headlines when stuff happens that you're interested in, and you can subscribe to it by sending it a message and saying, I want to know about this topic, and it'll send you stuff about that as it goes on. And even Domino's have got a bot that you can message to order pizza, and that's excellent because making it easier to get pizza is even better. And these things can be hooked directly into a chat system, so you can create something really quick and simple with node modules for stuff like Slack and Facebook, and they have great examples for these things as well. And it means that in an afternoon or less, you can even spin up a bot that has a single task and pull it into your workflow. And then there are frameworks that make it easy to do these things as well. So you can have a bot that has multiple functionalities and hooks into multiple chat systems. And there's stuff like Microsoft's bot framework and one called BotKit as well. And then there's GitHub's Hubot. They call Hubot the hardest working GitHubber because it does absolutely everything. It sits throughout their organization and just does everything. So there's stuff like they can use it to deploy codes. They send a message, it updates the code that's running live. Or provisioning hardware. So they send a message, it installs the operating system, configures it, does a test with a burn-in, puts the live code on it, adds it to the live infrastructure, and then it's done. Or even visitors. So when a visitor walks in, there's an iPad, and they tap their name into the iPad, and then it just sends a message to whoever they're supposed to be meeting saying, hey, your guest's here. It even controls the music. They have a system throughout their offices where music is just shared, and employees can control it by sending messages to like cue and skip tracks. And it does simple little things like that, and it makes their lives easier. And we've now got virtual assistants. So that's stuff like Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant. And they're basically bots, but a bit smarter. And you can get them on your phone through the web, and they're built into the OS of things like Windows 10 and Chrome OS. And they're in our homes with stuff like the Google Home and the Amazon Echo. And they help us out with things like reading you out news that you're interested in, and playing music, and buying things, even if that doesn't necessarily go well when the news reads out a report of that going bad. And again, it's quite easy to add your own abilities to these things. You can just write a node service for it. Glitch.com, which is an amazing website, which is a collaborative editor, and it has a load of templates, and it has help functionality. They have templates for Google Home and Alexa. And it took me an evening to add a basic one that just pulls quotes from Wikiquote and reads them out to you. And yeah, it's amazing that you can hook into these things within an evening. And the uprising's only just beginning. Bots and assistants are going to become far more common and far more prevalent. So in mid-2014, I started working on my own chatbot, and it automates things for me. So it's called Woodhouse. It's named after the butler on the TV show Archer. I was going to call it Jarvis, and then had to think about it and realized it's overdone, and it wasn't going to be anywhere as near as good as Jarvis would be. So I picked a worse butler and picked Woodhouse. So it's modular and extensible. It's got a core which is just some common functionality like routing, broadcasting, scheduling, and some preference storage stuff, as well as a few other bits. And then it's got a couple of types of modules so that you can get it to do stuff. So there's plugins which do whatever you want. They handle the heavy lifting. So you can get it to reply with texts, or connect to an API, or interface with a piece of hardware. And then there's interfaces which are ways to communicate with it, which is usually a chat system. So that's like Google Hangouts, or Facebook Chat, or Slack, or HipChat. And if there's a way you can connect it, you can probably connect it. A lot of these things, as I mentioned earlier, have a NPM module for it. And it's all open source and written in JavaScript. It runs on Node. It sits on a Raspberry Pi behind my TV in my living room. And it's all MIT licensed, because why the hell not? And I might change that after Bodil's talk earlier. And then, yeah, it's all up on GitHub. There's the link at the end, and you can all have a look and poke and delete and whatever you want, and have a try. So yeah, in the beginning, I only wanted to download movies. So I was sat at my previous company with one of my coworkers, waiting for a meeting to start, and he had his iPads. He was connected by VPN into his Raspberry Pi at home, was just sat queuing up movies to download. And I thought that seemed like a lot of effort. I knew of software that could download movies. I knew it had an API. I just wanted to be able to send a message, it to send me an IMDb link to say, is this the film you meant? And I go, yeah, cool. It just goes and downloads. But before I managed to do that, I can't remember how, but I managed to automate my lamps instead. So this is I'm sending a message, the lamps go off, send another message, and then the lamps come back on. And to me, that's amazing because as developers, as JavaScript developers, we generally don't get a real-world effect of our code. So I was just sat there typing the messages and hitting enter, and as the lights were going off and on, just giggling to myself. Because, yeah, it's amazing. And then, so this is the hardware for it. It's a cheap Wi-Fi plug that I got from China for about 15 euros. And because it's got the Chinese plug on the back, I have to use an adapter, which means it's super safe. And then by just poking around at the network connection for it, I found that it had telnet exposed and you could drop into it through that. And then I found a Google group which they'd been exploring and they'd found the SSH password. And it runs OpenWRT, which is a small Linux distribution for routers. And it's got a web server on it. So that means that we can put scripts on it and make it do stuff when you hit a page. So I've got it so that you hit a page with a certain parameter and it turns the relay on. Hit it with a different parameter, it turns the relay off. And then another page to request the status so you can tell if it's on or off. And then there's also a script on there that broadcasts the name, the IP, and some tags so that I can group it into certain sections every 2 minutes so that Woodhouse can pick up the plug. And then a page to configure those items as well. And I use this every day. So as I get off the bus after work, I'll send a message, and it'll have my lamps on. Or if I'm driving, I will shout to my phone and use Google Now to tell it to send a message to Woodhouse and turn the lamps on. Which means that I get home, the lights are on, I'm not stepping on anything that's been put through the door, I'm not looking around for the light switch, I just walk in and do what I'm going to be doing. It makes my life easier. And then I began adding other little bits. I eventually got round to doing the TV and film downloaders, but I never actually used them because streaming became popular and easy with stuff like Netflix. But I added reminders so that I can put a pizza in the oven and then send a message to tell it to remind me to get the pizza out of the oven because burnt pizza is terrible. And I can check if websites are up by sending it a message saying Woodhouse is google.com up. And it'll tell me yes or no using something like down for everyone or just me. And then GIF searches, because GIFs are excellent. Who doesn't want random GIFs sent to their phone? And then I started having all these random ideas of stuff that I could get it to control, like everything. But instead I started to rewrite it. Because the old code was a mess, and I'd just been sort of chucking things at it as I was getting really excited about building it. And it got to a point that if I was doing a refactor of anything or trying to build up a new feature, it would take way too long because I'd have to untangle all this stuff and figure out what it was doing and why I did it like that, and then break things. So I knew how it worked, and I could structure it well and split it up into nice modules. And I could use the S6 because Node had advanced at that point. I got to use all the nice stuff that came with that. And because it was Node, it just worked. And so I gave this talk the first time in November last year. And I wanted to do something new. So I automated my curtains. So you send a message and they open, and it's really loud and kind of creepy looking. And then send another message, and they'll close. And again, it's a bit eerie. I can't imagine what it looks like from the outside. So yeah, the parts for that were pretty basic. We've got a plastic box that I bought from a supermarket to hold everything in, a servo, some string, some plastic wheels, and some stuff to attach it to the curtain pole. I've just realized that sounds like I'm on a kid's TV show explaining what you need to build something. And yeah, the string just sits in a loop with the curtains attached to them by zip ties. And whichever way the string rotates depends whether they open or close. And it's kind of rubbish, but it works. And for the actual hardware part of it, it's an ESP8266, which is a microcontroller, like an Arduino, but it's got Wi-Fi. And it costs a couple of euros from China. And you can get this firmware called Mongoose OS, which means you can write JavaScript instead of having to do C. I don't know C, I just know JavaScript. And for getting it to control my curtains and to configure it and stuff like that, I had 75 lines. It's got endpoints for opening, closing, and to give me the status. I can configure it with some tags and a name and how long the duration for the open and close should be, and also broadcasting so that Woodhouse can pick it up again. And that's in 75 lines of hardware. And there's so much cool stuff for doing JavaScript and hardware together. So I've mentioned Mongoose already, but there's like Johnny 5 and Cylon.js, which they work on Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. And then there's development boards that have JavaScript running on them, like Esperinos and Tessels. And they're a little bit more expensive than an ESP8266 and loading Mongoose OS on it yourself, but they're a bit better supported. And you can use like NPM to run stuff on the Tessel, at least I know that. And there's plenty more on the web for this stuff as well. Like, people like hacking around at this stuff because it's interesting, it's fun. And it makes it easy to dive in and just get started, even if you have no experience with hardware. I have zero experience with hardware. And eventually I got bored over Christmas and started shouting on my laptop. And it wasn't like code wasn't working and being frustrated. It was generally to get voice control.
Woodhouse. Turn off lamps.
Chair lamp has been turned off. TV lamp has been turned off. Couch lamp has been turned off.
Woodhouse. Turn on lamps.
Chair lamp has been turned on. TV lamp has been turned on. Couch lamp has been turned on.
So yeah, it's got the worst reply voice ever. But that's the default in Festival, which is a text-to-speech library speech program on Linux. I'm sure if you run it on like a Mac or something like that, it'll sound awesome. But yeah, so the hot word of shouting Woodhouse is offline, which I know there's a lot of privacy concerns for the Alexa stuff where it's constantly recording you and sending it to Amazon servers. And that's using a library called Snowboy. And you train the model by going to their website and saying whatever you want your hot word to be 3 times. And then for the main part of it, I use Google Speech API because they have a ton more data than I will ever have. And it just makes it a lot easier. You get 60 minutes free a month, chunked into 15-second blocks. But you could use something like Amazon or Azure instead. But that's just literally when you want it to actually do something because it's triggered by the offline hot word. And the way this works is that I will have Raspberry Pis scattered around my house with a microphone and a speaker. And they deal with all that and then just send the actual converted text to the central hub of Woodhouse. So I have a central thing dealing with all the sort of state and everything happening. So yeah, that's the story of my strange home automation stuff so far, but it's only just beginning. I've so much stuff I want to do with it. Like, I want to add a third module type of data providers so that it can have like light sensors and temperature sensors and have that feed in and modules subscribe to it and stuff like that. And then a recipe system like IFTTT so that I don't even have to send a message. I just connect to my network and it's dark outside and it turns on my lamps and closes my curtains so I can be even lazier. And even like natural language processing, so I'm not having to, in the demo of the voice control, I barked a specific command that didn't sound natural because it was Woodhouse turn off lounge lamps, which feels wrong. It'd be nice to be able to say Woodhouse turn off the lounge lamps, and it feels a bit more conversational. So I'd love to get a bit more natural language processing in there. And even have a unit in my car so that I can do stuff like controlling the music and contact the main hub to do stuff like turning off my lamps so that it's easier. And I definitely don't want it to control my car because that would be a terrible idea. And even more hardware stuff, because I've really enjoyed having a play with hardware and getting a physical experience out of something that we don't normally. So stuff like, I've thought of how I could do a door lock or light switches or even controlling my thermostat. My manager told me how he does his with an Arduino and a servo, and it's one of those dial ones where it just rotates it to the point that it needs to turn it on or off. And that seems great, and I kind of want to do that now. And I'm genuinely terrified of the prospect of home ownership, not because of having a mortgage or being a grown-up, but because I'll probably burn the house down. So yeah, at the start of this talk, I said I was lazy. I want to correct that. I'm the stupid kind of lazy, where I'll spend hundreds and hundreds of hours making things so that I don't have to do simple little tasks like turning on my lamps and closing my curtains. But it goes further than that. I'm not here just to show off the cool stuff that I've built, or at least I think it's cool. I want to inspire you to build some cool, interesting things and show you that you can do some different things with JavaScript. It's not just for building like server runtimes and APIs or the front end. And I've learned so much whilst doing this stuff. I've learned a ton about JavaScript itself. I've learned about ES6 whilst doing it. I've learned some stuff about UDP and some stuff about hardware. And I kept going down the rabbit hole. Every time I came to something new, I'd find a ton more stuff that I wanted to learn. And I'd go, cool, I'm going to make a note of all this, and then just keep going. And because I found it interesting, it was fun. I would keep going. I even got a 3D printer because of it. I'm planning a second version of the curtain opener that's way better designed and has a tension system and stuff, and I'll use the 3D printer for that. I have a load of other stuff that I want to try and build with the 3D printer. And I realized a great parallel when I was working on this talk, that one of my other big passions is cooking and food. And if you were learning to cook, you would learn by cooking stuff that you want to eat. It's kind of wasteful if you're not interested in it, you're not going to eat it, learning how to cook it. And it's even difficult if you're not going to eat it to taste it and know that it's actually done well. And in a similar vein, that when you're learning stuff, build something that's weird and interesting to you. It'll keep you invested. It'll keep you coming back and wanting to keep going and building more. You can hack it. You can cut corners. You can refactor it. You're learning and playing around and being invested in it. You're building it for yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to share it. But people will probably be interested. So thank you very much. And come and say hello and chat if you see me around. Oh, and there's the links for